Welcome to Melody Makers, where we discuss arranging and composing and meet the real melody makers behind the music of Melody's traditional music, folkharp.com, and Afghan press music for the harp. I'm Gretchen Monson, harpist, pianist, organist, and arranger, and your host for today. In today's episode, we have a special guest with us. Rojean Loucks came to the harp as an adult, but has contributed immensely to the folk harp community and repertoire. She currently has over 130 publications with Afghan press and melodies, and actively performs in locations around the world. Before we chat with Rojean, let's get a taste of her beautiful work. This is Olivia's song from the book Reflections. Good morning, Rojean.
Good morning. How are you, Gretchen?
I'm very good. How about yourself?
Oh, wonderful. It's a spring morning. It's beautiful outside. What more can we ask?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the podcast this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So I would love to talk about your harp journey. And fascinating thing, I was reading on your website, you apparently began your harp journey kind of later in life as an adult.
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you first saw or heard a harp?
Well, probably when I was in high school, I sat next to a harpist in a state music educators orchestra. And it looked, huge and beautiful and overwhelming. And I didn't think anything more about it until as an adult, I sang with a madrigal group that went to a Renaissance festival every year. And that's where I met Pamela Bruner playing her the first harp she played there was a small lap harp, and she was singing with it, and I was just entranced.
Wow.
And I got to know her, and she was the one who encouraged me to get started because I thought I was way too old. We have this belief that if you don't start as a child, you can't succeed. And that's just not true.
Yeah. I agree. That's great. So, when you first wanted to get into harp, you had to find one, and it was apparently a difficult process to find a folk harp at that time.
It was. I don't even know 30 years ago, there was no internet. And so you didn't do a Google search. I went to every music store in the area, and they said, "You want a mouth harp? You want a harpsichord?" And I said, I'd say, "No, it's one of these that you pluck the strings." And we don't sell those here. And then I found a Stony End Eve in a child's music catalog. I was working with early childhood at the time, and I waited 6 long weeks for it to get to me because they made them to order, obviously. And didn't know the first thing about what to do with it when it arrived. It was really strange. But
Wow. Because you had played flute and piano before.
correct. And some organ, which I decided
Oh,
was
fun.
too many digits involved. I didn't like trying to figure out where my feet and hands were at the same time. So,
It is a lot. Oh,
but
but so much fun. So after you found your first harp, was there a harp teacher in the area or did you have to look far?
I drove an hour and a half to take lessons from a
Wow.
concert harpist who was convinced I needed to buy one of her harps.
Oh,
And I couldn't make her understand what folk harp was about.
huh.
And I took my little 22 string for my first lesson, and she held it up and turned it one way and then another and said, "This is a harp." And I was just crushed because it was my baby, you know?
Oh, yeah.
She talked me into renting one of her Lion and Healy troubadours,
Okay.
which I did not like the sound of, but I was then convinced that I needed a floor harp.
Mm.
So eventually I was able to get a Heartland harp, and through, of course, through Pamela Bruner, and the rest is history.
Oh, so much fun. Wow. So your harp has taken you all sorts of places.
It has, it has. Um, Shortly after my husband died, I learned about Beth Collet's harp tour of Norway. And the timing was fantastic. And it was really fun to tour. It was fun to play with other harpists, harpers, I guess is what we call them, right? and that gave me the travel bug. And then later I went to Scotland and Holy Land with Sunita's groups.
Oh, fun.
And yes, you asked about taking my harp to Japan. I had my son married a Japanese woman, and they lived
Oh,
in Tokyo. And so when the children were small, we went out for a visit, and I took my small harp and played in one of the children's classrooms, and for the Japanese children. And their teacher had taught all the children to sing "Take Me Home, Country Roads" in English. That was such a fun connection. So yeah, my harp has been a lot of places.
wow. So do you have any anecdotes from when you were in Scotland and Norway and the Holy Land touring with a group? What was that like?
Well, getting there to Norway with a harp, when the airlines told me that it wouldn't fit in baggage, was the first thing. And Dave loaned me a smaller, it was a 36 string, a Legend. And I traveled with it through baggage, no problem, in its cardboard case.
Wow.
Of course, it had to be opened every single time we
Of
went
course.
through baggage claim, to make sure that was really what was in there.
Yeah.
but it was unscathed. It traveled well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What kind of audiences were you all playing for?
Audiences. Well, one of the hotels we stayed at, we did a concert for them in exchange for our room.
Ooh,
And that was, and I should have looked that up. I can't remember where that was that was in Norway.
fascinating.
Beth, I'm sure if Beth were here, she could rattle it off, off her tongue, but I can't remember exactly where that was. It was a beautiful hotel. Other anecdotes. Well, when we were in Scotland, we were invited to a garden party. We were led into the facility with bagpipes, and that was really fun. I have visited Ireland. Well, the first time I went to Ireland was to take a class with Janet Harbison on learning how to teach people to play by ear, or by rote, the Irish way.
Yeah.
That was great fun. And I returned a number of years later and got to see the Brian Boru harp in the wherever it's housed. And now it is completely encased in glass. Nobody can touch it because it was stolen
Oh.
and buried. And when they finally found it, it took a great deal of cleaning to get it back to display shape, let alone, anybody trying to play it.
Yes, definitely. Wow.
Just interesting experiences everywhere we went. It was really fun. The only time I really had to take a harp with me was to Norway. Otherwise, there were harps that we could play there. And actually, a year ago, October, I was in Italy with Sunita's group, and she rented a place out in the countryside. We had the villa all to ourselves. It was really great, and she had borrowed enough harps that we could all play. And we had classes, and she played for us, and we played for each other, and did a little bit of touring as well. So that was fabulous. But
wow, that is amazing.
It's been the harp has just taken me all over the world, and it's been fantastic. It's been really fun experiences.
Great. So you have been an arranger and composer for many years, and we at Melodies are very happy to hear all your arrangements. What was the inspiration behind your first arrangement?
Well, I think I wanted to play Autumn Leaves on the harp, and I couldn't find an arrangement. So I figured out how to do it. And I thought, well, maybe somebody else would like to play this too. So then I went through the whole process to get the copyright and get it printed. And I think that was the first one I did.
Wow, that is amazing. So I've seen some of the copyright letters that you went through, the process for each piece. And you've done a lot of unusual pieces for lever harp.
Yes.
It is amazing that they have very few lever changes, if any at all, and that they still sound really good.
Right. Thank you. The trickiest one to get was Memory.
Ooh.
Andrew Lloyd Webber. I got a list of at least 10 things that I had to change in order for that arrangement to be acceptable for them. They didn't like my creativity with timing or chords. It had to be like theirs. And I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm going to publish it. I guess I'll do what they say. So in my arrangement, it is what they requested, but when I play it, I still play it my way.
Wow, that is so interesting that they'd be that picky.
Oh, very, very. And that's the only publishing outlet that has been that particular about details.
All right. Wow, interesting. So a lot of your pieces are inspired by your grandchildren.
They are.
How did you go about the process of choosing what kind of piece to assign to each child?
I just have to say, each piece just came to me. I was composing the first one for a grandchild when she was actually our fourth grandchild to be born, but the first one that I had written a song for. And when I was writing it, it was about the time when I went to stay with her mom and dad and newborn. And her papa said, "That's Olivia's song." So after that, I just went ahead, and when I thought of a song that seemed like it belonged to a particular child, I wrote it out.
Oh, wow.
Inspiration came from in various places. One was by the side of a lake for a grandson. One was, I can't remember where they all happened, but yeah, all my 9 grandchildren have their own song. Some grandmothers do quilts, some do scrapbooks. I do music.
And I bet they love it.
That's pretty fun, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Olivia now plays harp herself. And so she and her mother both. And that's really fun to have that connection.
Oh, wow. And did you teach her to play your daughter to play harp?
Well, kind of. She kind of taught herself, and she watched me, and I gave her some unofficial lessons, I guess. So she joined our harp circle, and Olivia did for a while she was living here. She's now in Colorado Springs, But yeah, I didn't give any formal lessons that I can recall, but I think she watched and
Oh,
absorbed.
yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, with your arrangements, what inspires you to just sit down and write one? Do you just write one from top to bottom, or do you take multiple weeks, days? What's your process?
Well, I learned that just as a poet or a writer discovers, if you don't write down what inspires you, when it comes to you, you lose it. Sometimes it would be in the middle of the night and, oh, I'll remember that in the morning, and no. But often the music would come to me as I was driving, and I would have to pull over the side of the road and write down the letter notations for the different for the tune. And I have files of snippets of songs, and sometimes I'll just put some together. Sometimes they'll inspire me to flesh out more music. And there's still songs in there. I don't know if they'll ever get completed or not.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
My friend said, well, I want to learn to play the harp. And I'd say, well, okay. And that was about the time that the harpsichord harps came out. I bought 6 harpsichords and gathered this group of gals who said they wanted to learn to play. And they said, well, you can teach us all together. And that's how some of my music started, was music that they could play. And finding public domain pieces that I could simplify enough for them to learn to play together was the beginning of a stack of harpsichord music I've got.
That's fantastic. Do you have a favorite arrangement?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know. Probably the 2 that we've talked about, Olivia's song and Celebration, are the ones that I've played the most. I don't know. Olivia's song is kind of a dance. It was, it was like she used to dance on her tippy toes when she was a little girl. And it just reminds me of when she was little. And that's kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Celebration,
Wow.
I was inspired to write that following a very difficult medical procedure that my husband went through with his cancer treatment. And when he made it out, it was just like, wow, we have to celebrate this. So that's where Celebration came from.
Oh, so sweet.
Yeah, so I guess I haven't really given you an answer to your question as far as what inspires me. And favorites, I'd have to go through the list of Christmas songs. There's so many Christmas favorites, because that was one of the things that inspired me to play the harp too. My husband and I were shopping during the holiday season, and this was before I was starting to play the harp, and there was a young woman playing harp in the plaza, the shopping center in Kansas City. And I was moved to tears. I was transfixed. I just stood there and watched her, and I thought, okay, if something moves me that much, maybe I need to find out more about it. Wow. And that's when my discovery journey began.
Oh, that is so sweet. Well, thank you so much for sharing your harp journey and stories and anecdotes with us. This has been so fascinating and encouraging to all of us, I'm sure.
Thank you. Don't ever think it's too late to learn to play the harp. I've had students who started when they were in their 80s. And
fantastic.
It's a great journey.
That is so amazing. All right. Well, all of your music is available on folkharp.com and Afghan. And we're going to ask our listeners to see links in the descriptions below. And to close out, we'll have one more recording of your music. And it's one of your favorites, as aforementioned, Celebration from the book Soul Dance. Thank you.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Thank you for listening today. If you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. Share the Melody Makers podcast with your friends, family, and even random strangers. On behalf of Melody's Traditional Music and Afghan Press Music for the Harp, this is Gretchen Monson wishing you a joyful, music-filled day.